It's really just one person against another. You know, there aren't hurdles to jump over or anything like that. It's really just this struggle between two people.
The rules of chess are pretty easy to pick up, but of course the problem is, how do you become successful? How do you win?
Yeah! You man! Checkmate!
People think it's a measure of intelligence, and it isn't. It's a measure of chess ability, that's all.
This is fantastic. Chess is the best idea we ever had. It's just two guys. It's no chicks. It's just man to man. Cultured, urbane, civilized, male stuff.
I think chess can be for anyone, like anyone can enjoy it, and you can be old, young, male, female, trendy, not trendy. It's not really an issue as long as you just enjoy it and you have fun.
Oh, one more thing. Oh, how'd you actually play chess?
It looks more difficult than it is. But sometimes when you try to explain this to people who can't play chess, they go, oh, terribly difficult, can't do that kind of... Yes, you can.
There are simple rules that if the nation followed these simple rules, the standard of chess would... Before I start a game, almost an awe-inspiring feeling actually. You have this blank canvas in front of you and you realise that on this day it's possible that you could actually achieve immortality.
Well, it's a moment pregnant with possibilities.
It's like a sort of silk sheet that is about to be, torn.
At the start of the game, then the pieces are all on the back rank, behind the pawns, which move rather slowly. So really, the first stage in the game is to mobilise your forces.
Is completely normal. It's called Queen's Pawn Opening, and it places a white pawn bang in the centre of the board, preparing to control the key central squares.
So, rule number one, open with the centre pawn, either in two squares in front of your pawn, in front of your queen, or the pawn in front of your king, two squares. That's really important because it's in the centre. The battle in the opening takes place in the centre. If you dominate the centre, you dominate the rest of the board. Don't move pawns up at the side of the board, that's a disaster.
There was a famous occasion when David Bronstein, who was one of the best players ever to have lived, and he once thought for 40 minutes before playing his first move. Now, he knew everything you could possibly imagine a chess player could know, but he was fascinated, and he suddenly was seized with the possibilities. And his opponent became more and more irritated because he felt that Bronstein was mocking him. But I don't think he was. He just suddenly thought, but this is such an interesting position. Should I play this? Should I play this? I could do this, I could do that.
Second rule, bring out your pieces, and that means normally your knights and your bishops first. So let's bring out a knight.
White's third move develops the knight to put pressure on black's central pawn. And now we have a recognised chess opening. It's called the Queen's Gambit.
names, and some of the names are great. The modern Benoni was always one that really appealed to me. The key thing is dictate the play. Play the game you want to play, rather than the game your opponent wants to play.
I wouldn't say I'm the best person for openings, but I can decide when it's a sensible move or not. But I know like the Sicilian and the Benko and the English and all different openings that are most common, but sometimes I do get caught out if there's an opening that I don't know, but then I just look it up and learn from it.
The most, and is perhaps features the most often in descriptions of chess. So there's something about the way the knight moves that obviously has general appeal.
Oh, how does the racehorse move again?
It's not a racehorse, it's a knight.
In general, I'd say that knights are the king's best friend, just as dogs are to men. They can defend a king, they can go forward and attack the opponent's king, and even while stationary, they can jump so many squares that no other piece can dream of doing.
And also, it's best if you have them in the centre rather than on the side, because then they can attack more squares and attack more pieces and have better control over the board. Like some people say knights on the rim are dim, basically, where if they're on the rim they're not very good, but if they're in the centre they're like very good.
I always took great pains not to lose to prodigies, and what I did, the method I adopted, was to play with extreme caution so that I couldn't be sort of held
stage anywhere.
I first spotted Nigel when he was, I think, about 11 or 12 years old, in the British Championship of 1977, and he qualified for the championship at a very, very young age. I mean, nowadays, of course, you've got to win the championship when you're 12, otherwise forget it. But then, being in the championship at the age of 12 was extraordinary.
Nigel Short of England playing white against Tony Miles, also of England, playing black. In many ways, a fairy tale final to this year's Master Game tournament.
He was a very promising player as a junior, shot through the ranks, and he was always marked out as something special.
Yeah, so E8 equals queen.
Yes. Well, random move. A4 check.
Surely that's desperation. Well, I can take that pawn A4 with my queen. Well, queen takes A4.
Yeah, he noticed that. Oh well, good night from me.
Congratulations. Please don't make a habit of it, though.
One of my Grandmaster colleagues was beaten by an 8-year-old in a tournament a few years ago. Believe me, that was on the front page of the papers next day.
Well, it looked like a one-sided contest on paper, a respected chess grandmaster against an 8-year-old boy. But David Howell astounded the chess world by taking victory against the former British champion, Dr. John Nunn.
I heard he was quite a good player, ex-British champion, so I thought I was going to lose quite badly. It was quite a surprise when I won.
I found that when I was young, playing against slightly older men, perhaps 20, 30-year-olds, I never held any fear. Although I knew they were experienced and they'd achieved certain things, I always went into every game concentrating my own strengths, and perhaps this put them off.
I played Hull when he was 9, and he beat me, but only on time. I think if with more time I'd have beaten him. So I think at 9 he was not enormously strong. He was kind of strong for a 9-year-old.
It doesn't matter if you draw, 8-year-old draws with Grandmaster isn't much of a headline. 8-year-old beats Grandmaster, you've got people beating their way to your door. So if I drew, I wasn't too upset, but I just didn't want to lose. And usually I managed to win, but the secret is do not lose under any circumstances. White's 7th move is a safety precaution. The most common way for starting players to lose a game of chess is to lose a piece to an attack. Well, the white bishop is attacked and it moves away from the attack. It's as simple as that.
One of the classic mistakes that chess players make is to get wrapped up in their own plans and they don't pay attention to what their opponent is up to. So for example here, Black plays the queen here, very nice idea, wants to swoop down with the queen to take the pawn. White just moves the queen over, and Black thinks, great, he's not stopping me, I'll take the pawn. Then suddenly White swoops across the other side of the board checking the king, supported by the bishop. The king moves to the side, it's checkmate. If black had been a bit more aware, then of course he could have protected this pawn very easily just by moving the knight over. Everything's completely safe, and then on the next turn, black could take one of these pawns with the queen.
I run a club for postal chess players. I'm not enthralled to the postman because you can't be. You never know when he's going to come. It might be early in the morning, it might be late. So you live your life ordinarily. Perhaps there are half a dozen items of mail, of which 2 of them might be chess envelopes. Well, then you put the other 4 aside and you look at the 2. And after a number of years of experience, you will remember, oh, that's Mr. So-and-so's game, I know what the position was there. That's Mr. So-and-so's game, I know what the position was there. Now, sometimes it's very, very easy. I mean, if your opponent has captured an important piece, then if you can, you recapture. And then you close the envelope up and send it back to him. Sometimes, of course, it's very different. Sometimes after perhaps 15 moves or 20 moves, anything could happen. So you've really got to look at all the possibilities. Once I've decided on my moves against, for example, my friend Mike Collins, I fold over the card, making sure that I've written the move down, because that's easy to forget. And I put it in the window envelope, making sure that Mike Collins' address shows through the window, and then I stick the stamp on and I go out to the post box and post it. And that's my moves completed for the time being.
I think Victor's a very solid sort of player. Yeah, I think as regards postal chess, he's quite a good player. I think what I like about postal chess as well is that, you know, when you're playing in a club or on the internet, you've got that time pressure all the time. You've got to make a move within a certain, you know, a few minutes or whatever. But in postal chess, you can take as long as you like over one move, and you can really analyse deeply to get what you think, you know, is the best possible move in that situation.
There's no doubt about it, if you play chess in order to have a rush of adrenaline, well then postal chess won't give it to you. I mean, if you want to play chess and get a rush of adrenaline, you must play against the clock. And what happens, of course, is when you play against the clock, you can play jolly well for an hour and a half, and then at the end, where you've got to make a certain number of moves by the time the flag falls, you make lots of mistakes and spoil all your efforts. To me, that's no attraction.
First exchange of pieces. Black captures a pawn, but white is going to recapture.
White's 9th move is a recapture of the lost pawn with the bishop. White has no choice. He must maintain the material balance. Checkmate's easier if you've got more men on the board. And for example, if you're playing football and two of your opponent's team commit fouls and get sent off, and you've got 11 guys, they've only got 9, the chances of your winning increase because you've got more men, more resources on the playing field or the board. So winning pieces is a very traditional way of winning the game.
Yeah, one should, in general, only exchange pieces if you have an advantage, or if it will bring you an advantage, or if it will lessen the burden of defence, really. It's always good to exchange a passive defensive piece for perhaps an opponent's more actively placed piece.
So here, for example, it would be terrible if you played rook takes knight, because you lose your rook. A rook is worth 5 points and a knight is worth 3.
Now, To remember easily just how much each of the pieces is worth, it's sensible to count the pawn, which is the weakest piece, until it actually gets to the end of the board. But early on, it's the weakest piece on the board. So you count a pawn as worth just 1 point. Then bishop and knight are worth about 3 each. A rook is worth about 5, and a queen 9.
And even if you lose just 1 pawn, if you don't have some compensating advantage like more space or an attack or something, that can be quite fatal.
I lost the pawn in the game that I lost, and then that meant that I was unequally matched against him, and so he had the advantage because in the endgame, because the pawns promote to anything you want, it meant that he had more pawns than me, and so he had a better advantage of promoting the pawns.
Two of the world's top chess players are in London for a tournament which aims to bring a touch of show business to the game of chess. Nigel Short, Britain's leading grandmaster, and Russia's world champion Garry Kasparov are playing a rapid version of chess at the London Hippodrome. The organisers hope it'll catch on with TV audiences in the same way as snooker.
Very fast.
I don't see speed chess as a variation of chess. I mean, you can play long-form chess, rapid play, all moves in an hour, let's say, or blitz chess, speed chess, all moves in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I think all 3 forms of the game are valid.
To increase the speed of what you like in chess. Chess is a game which you have logic and you have artistic bents like these guys. You see patterns on the board. And that's the way. When you speed up the chess, you see the patterns quicker.
Show him who the daddy is. Show him who the daddy is.
Show me the daddy. I am the daddy.
Next. White's 10th move, castling the king into safety on the king side and also getting the king's rook into the game. Standard device.
In 99% of all top games, in top tournaments in chess, players castle. Why? Because it keeps your king very safe behind 3 pawns at the side of the board, and also it allows your rook, which was in the corner doing nothing, to enter into the centre. Again, the centre is where the battle takes place in the opening.
Some people forget to castle. It's one of the more difficult rules. Moving the pieces is fairly simple. Castling, sometimes people forget. Castle the king early on, get it into safety, so your king, the target of the enemy operations, is in security.
So let's get the rules right. The king always moves 2 squares, whether you're castling on the short side or the long side, king side or queen side. And there can't be any pieces in the way. So here, you always move the king first. King moves 2 squares, 1, 2, and then the rook goes over the king and next to it. That's castling. And if you want to castle on the other side of the board, again, the king moves 2 squares, 1, 2, and then the rook goes over and next to it. So there you go, 3 rules. Open with the centre pawn, bring out your pieces, get castled.
White makes a very aggressive 12th move, advancing his central pawn into black's half of the board. And I think we can say safely now that we've exited the opening stage and we're now firmly in the middle game.
The middle game is normally when both sides have developed all of their pieces.
And both sides have castled. And then the real battle. strategy is long-term, but tactics are short-term hits where you can maybe gain a piece, win material. So it's all about material chess. So here, there is a very nice way of actually winning a piece here for white. And this is a typical tactic called a pin. If this knight moves, then the rook will be able to take the queen, and that's obviously good news. The queen is the most powerful piece on the board. So the knight doesn't want to move. However, we can actually attack the knight, either forcing it to move, or, well, in this case, you'd never give your queen away. But it means that white will win a piece. And this is called a pin. We say the knight is pinned to the queen. Next turn, we can simply play pawn takes knight.
White's 14th move. The white queen recaptures the knight, maintains material balance, and now white's most powerful piece occupies a focal square, bang slap in the middle of the board. It looks as if white could be doing well.
In the opening, the queen tends to watch as you improve the rest of your pieces. It's placed relatively well at the beginning of the game, and therefore you wouldn't tend to use it too much until perhaps the middle game when it can aid with an attack.
This is an error that beginners commonly make, is to bring their queen out early because they want to go on the attack with their most powerful piece. But experienced chess players know that it's better to wait, that you have to mobilize all your forces before you're likely to be able to execute a successful attack, rather than going it alone with your queen.
Madame Renoir-Chevrier, the only woman participating in the tournament.
Big debate about why is it that we don't have women of the same strength. There was Polgar, Judith Polgar, and she was high as ranked 6th in the world, I think.
Constituting as they do 3/4 of the Hungarian women's team, the Polgars are an authentic chess phenomenon. The girls, who are educated at home by their child psychologist parents, have all been expert chess players since the age of 3. Judith, who's still only 12, is the best player of her age, regardless of gender, in the whole of chess history.
Other people have said that there is a difference between male and female brains, or between male and female minds, that has been responsible for men being generally better at chess. Do you believe this?
No, definitely I'm refusing it.
When will there be a woman world champion?
Well, maybe she's sitting next to me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the issue of the gender divide in chess, you know, it's a very complicated question, and it's something that people have argued about, continue to argue about a great deal. But I think personally, to me, it was quite important. You know, certainly I feel I benefited a lot from being able to play in women's only tournaments. Just in terms of, I suppose, getting the rewards of winning. Now, people argue that women in general, and I suppose myself in particular, you know, would have hypothetically been a stronger player had such tournaments not existed, because the bar would have been raised higher.
My own view of the matter is that there is no mental or physiological reason why women should not be as good as men. But there is a lack of interest, you know, because very few women play chess. Relatively few women want to, if you like, spend their lives grasping wordlessly in some bottomless pit for something, which is what chess is about.
I don't think that women have the same urge to win as a lot of men do. I mean, after all, a lot of men play chess for the satisfaction of victory. And women aren't like that. I mean, they're more social beings.
When I played when I was little, it was just a game, and if I lost, I lost, and if I won, I won. But I think the more I grew up, the more I wanted to beat my opponent and humiliate them and just have the, image of a really aggressive player, so then when I come up against people I already have that mental advantage over them. He's lost! The fact that just more boys play doesn't mean that boys are better than girls, because most of the time you see the girls on the top boards playing against the boys. But on the whole, I think that girls can give the boys a good run for their money and even take the money, in matter of speaking.
Black's 17th move. The bishop finally enters the game, but it does so with great effect, attacking White's queen and setting up dangerous threats on this long diagonal. A skewer is rather similar to a pin in that two pieces are lined up together, and that gives you the opportunity to win one of the pieces. Or here's the skewer, or the kebab, as we say in coffee house chess. So the bishop moves here. You can see they're on the same line as the bishop. Now, when it's a skewer, the stronger piece is ahead of the other piece, and that's the queen is the one we're going to win. So the bishop checks the king. In chess, if you're in check, you must get out of check immediately. King moves to the side, and we capture the queen. That's the skewer.
How about this? If you've ever played chess, it's about to get rather physical. The game has been given a new lease of life in the boxing ring.
Let's get ready for chess boxing!
In London now has funding to develop community chess boxing in inner cities, and this will help its drive to the rest of the UK. And already it has an avid following.
Now, I want you to hit it like that. Left, right. Bam, 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 bam. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
The reason why boxing and chess go so well together is that they're complementary in a way. Both boxing and chess are one-on-one competitions. They both involve a lot of thought, tactics and strategy. It's just that in boxing you need the physical edge. In chess you are trained to use a mental edge.
Me personally, I find the boxing easier because I'm more of a physical person. But as I haven't played chess before, although I've learned now, I do find it quite difficult because after a few knocks around the body, you're not too conscious, so you need to be able to take that into consideration and be able to adapt.
Hello. Yesterday it was those meaty skewers, and today we're staying in the kitchen for forks.
Knights are good for forks and good for tricking out your opponent and occupying central spaces on the board.
It kind of swoops out of the air, lands on a square and attacks three things at once, which most other pieces can't do. So you've got to watch out for knight forks. They're called knight forks.
A fork is when one piece attacks two pieces at the same time. So here, for example, the knight moves in, checking the king and attacking the queen at the same time. So the king has to move away, and then the knight can take the queen. So the fork is a kind of double attack, and there are various ways you can do this. I mean, that was one with a knight. You could also do it with a queen. For example, here, let's get an enemy rook there. So here you can attack both king and rook at the same time by playing your queen forward. Very powerful piece because it's looking at two pieces on opposite sides of the board. So the queen moves forward. It's a fork because it's checking the king and attacking the rook at the same time. So the king must move out of check, and then the queen takes the rook. So you've won a piece.
White's 18th. The powerfully placed central queen takes Black's knight. Looks like White's taken a piece for nothing.
Black's 18th move. The bishop slices across the board, capturing a knight and threatening checkmate and threatening White's queen. It looks like White is in deep trouble.
Major insult sessions and refusal to shake hands, and people kicking each other under the table. I mean, there's been all sorts of stuff like this.
In every respect, chess is peddling comparisons with the most brutal of sports.
I like to think of chess as being mental boxing.
The boxing parallels extend to the ritual pre-fight insult. These two men have deliberately publicised a deep dislike for each other, their business partnership notwithstanding. And today Short spoke not only of Kasparov's communist past, but also took a gratuitous sideswipe at his personal appearance.
Anyone who has seen Garry Kasparov by the swimming pool will know that he's extremely hairy. In fact, the Norwegian women's team refer to him as the Rug.
Mama!
I think the worst thing I've ever seen is Viktor Korchnoi, one of the great chess grandmasters, almost became world champion. He swept the pieces off the board once when he lost a game against his arch rival Anatoly Karpov. Absolutely fantastic. And some chess players have come to blows across the chessboard, but thankfully I've never been on the receiving end of that, not yet at any rate.
In junior chess, it's more a few tears and a few tantrums, but it is quite surprising when the grandmasters and international masters have a little argument at the board, because they're meant to be really good sports by then, because they've been doing it for years now.
In postal chess, the disputes are about things like handwriting, which is not clear, so you don't know exactly what your opponent's moved, or occasionally misunderstandings. For example, you can move a knight and then your opponent doesn't know perhaps which knight you've moved, and so a few moves later you discover you're playing different games.
But chess players, are human. Chess players have emotions. Chess players experience anger. Chess players are very competitive.
It's only outsiders who are surprised by that. All insiders know that that's what chess really is. That you reach for, you've got to concentrate your aggression to such an extent that you will, it's like a brawl where you pick up an ashtray or a chair, whatever's going, you will use. And those on the inside of chess understand that, take that for granted.
White's 19th move. The white queen has to retreat, and it's the only square to go to, because black was threatening. Queen takes pawn in front of the white king, checkmate, and the queen has to defend that pawn.
Black's 21st move, queen takes queen. Of course, white is going to recapture. It's a queen exchange, but that brings about an endgame.
The endgame isn't the end of the game. I mean, the end of the game, I said, can come even in the opening or the middle game, but the end game, technically, usually queens will have been exchanged. Certainly most of the pieces exchanged. If there are more than 2 or 3 pieces on the board each, then it's not an end game, it's still a middle game.
And the end game is probably the most difficult part of chess because immense precision is required. And the endgame is the one, I suspect, where the strength between the really strong players and the not quite so strong players is most evident. I think that's where real strength tells.
In the endgame, what you're trying to do is get one of your pawns across to the other side of the board to get a new queen, because it's only with a new queen that you can get checkmate.
Right, well, we've seen all the pieces now. We've got the pawns, which we've kept on saying look like simple, innocent little pieces you can throw away with gear abandon all through the game. You absolutely cannot do any such thing. You want to preserve them with great care and tender, loving attention.
Pawns can be boring sometimes, but they're actually quite important for defending and keeping your central structure.
Don't underestimate the pawn. A great French 18th century chess player called Philidor said the pawn is the soul of chess. And don't just give away the pawns randomly, because in the end game, believe me, you're going to need those pawns because they can become queens.
Black's 22nd move, the pawn advances, attacking the bishop, and this sets up a beautiful pawn chain. This pawn majority is hopefully going to decide the game in Black's favour.
The computer Deep Blue has tonight triumphed over the world chess champion Garry Kasparov. It's the first time a machine has defeated a reigning world champion in a classical chess match.
The ending relies on really good powers of concrete analysis. And of course that's where the computers have really had an enormous impact.
One of the most powerful supercomputers in the world seemed to have the upper hand. Of the two contestants, only Kasparov could feel the tension and nerves that went with the occasion. If he lost, it would be a landmark in both the worlds of chess and of science. And that's exactly how it turned out. The game was over in just an hour.
C4 has resigned.
There was a period after Kasparov had lost to Deep Blue when I think the chess world was seized by a kind of collective global depression, and there are even quite strong international players who weren't allowed to take leave from their jobs to play in tournaments because the boss said, oh, chess is a trivial game, even computers can beat world champions now.
There was one zeal to beat Garry Kasparov, and when a big corporation with unlimited resources would like to do so, there are many ways to achieve the result.
For all my life, I've lived alongside computers. I've used them to help improve my chess, and it's pretty hard to imagine all those years ago when players would just prepare on their own. They'd help train themselves. I mean, it's a scary thought, really, living without computers. But it's also scary to know that nowadays you can hardly play against a computer without it destroying you and seeing millions of different positions that you'd never even dreamed of.
I talked to a grandmaster who'd just been beaten by a machine, and I had a chess machine that I would play on level 1, and it was a monster on level 1. And this grandmaster said it's like having a wall come at you. The program is, obviously take control of the center, and it just doesn't make mistakes. It doesn't make any weak moves at all. Everything is as sharp as it possibly can be.
Actually, something else has happened. Computers have shown chess players that the possibilities on the board are infinite. This is a cosmos on 64 squares. And computers have shown that there are so many different ways of playing the game. You're not limited to certain classical formal strategies. You can play chess in so many different ways. So actually, the game has exploded with possibilities since the arrival of computers.
I once had a captain in a county match that I was playing in who asked me, have you put the positions on your computer? And I said, no, of course not. I consider that's cheating. But for him, he thought it was all right. I never played in his team again. Another thing, which may not be immediately evident, is that if somebody wants to use a computer at their end, it's difficult for them to do so without your finding out. Because, except for the most expensive machines, computers tend to play in a style of their own. They make certain types of moves which really give away their style of play. And you can't always be sure, but once or twice I've challenged opponents and they have admitted in the end that they were playing computers, using computers. I can't understand why, because there's no satisfaction whatever in winning a game that machines won for you.
Now, where were we?
Mate in 6 moves, master.
Oh, be quiet, K9.
White's 25th move brings the king towards the middle of the board. In the endgame, the king is actually a powerful piece.
chess is about attacking the king, but in the endgame then that's not kind of the top priority anymore, because a lot of the pieces have been exchanged off. King's safety is rather less important. In fact, the king becomes an attacking piece. And what the players are really trying to do is one of them is trying to gain a decisive superiority in force that they can then ultimately convert to a king attack.
Your job in chess is to checkmate the king and not to get checkmated yourself. So all sorts of things can be happening. You can be material behind, material ahead, but it's the king is the focus.
The king, which you spend most of the early part of the game desperately trying to protect, becomes a very important fighting piece in the end game, with a value equivalent to about that of a rook in terms of its activity and what it can do on the board. And who is victorious in the end game is often decided by whose king is the more active.
Black's 37th move. The king recaptures the pawn and threatens to take white's remaining pawn on that side of the board.
While maintaining the king's safety, it's important to help the king to maybe shepherd the other pieces forward, and a king is often the best protector of a pawn when pushing it for the other side.
Black's 38th move. The king captures the pawn. For the first time in the game, Black actually has more pieces than his opponent.
To get really involved in chess, you've got to be peculiar in some respect. I mean, the public knows this. The public has got this idea of chess players being twisted personalities. Well, that's not entirely true. But I belong to clubs where I thought to myself, are there any normal people here?
Bognor Regis and the 13th International Chess Congress, the scene of a crime. It's not the crime of the century, but it's one that's been taking place every year for the last 5 years. Here's an ordinary chess set, but it's got two pieces missing. They're the black knights, and here they are with their heads gone. Have you ever known anything like this before, the headless knights?
It's a staggering thing. I've never seen anything like it before in all my life, and it's quite upsetting.
Have you sought out medical opinion or psychiatric opinion?
Yes, I have. I've had a word with a doctor who is engaged in the main event, and he told me that he's met each one of the players in the main event and found that they are all perfectly normal people, and the only abnormalities are the usual ones that you find among chess players. Certainly, said the doctor, there are no psychopaths here.
You do get some people who really, really concentrate on chess and they exclude themselves from like social activities as well, and then you get the people who sit there with the stereotypical image with the anoraks and the big cartons of milk.
There is something very unclean about chess. It's very hard to define. You see it in Washington Square Park in New York, where the babbling drunks are all grandmasters. They're all screaming against the voices in their head.
So in the endgame, the basics you need to know are, you're trying to get a pawn to the other side of the board to get a new queen. Use your king, and you have to know the basic checkmates, like king and queen against king. You must know how to checkmate with king and queen against a lone king. A bit more difficult, king and rook against king. Also, one ought to know that. And there's one to start with. A simple one, checkmating with queen and rook against king. And what you're aiming for is the classic lawnmower checkmate, or the double-barreled shotgun checkmate, is when the rook or the queen comes down with these two beams across to the king, trapped at the side of the board. That's the classic double-barreled shotgun checkmate, because the king has no escape from the line of the queen and rook. The position is absolutely hopeless. While white's king is dealing with the pawns on one side of the board, black will queen a pawn on the other side. With an extra queen, you can checkmate very, very easily. It's a simple win.
Final position, why did white resign? Basically, this endgame boiled down to a duel between the two kings, supported by their own armies of pawns. And in that duel, the black king acted as a fighting unit, it was centralised, it supported its own phalanx, whereas the white king was held back, the pawns could not move as fast forwards, and in that duel, the black king triumphed with its centrality and its mobility.
Coping with the defeat can be very difficult. My last match against John Spielman, I almost let this get to me, and I simply couldn't get out of bed at all that day, because then I would have to think, and this would be terrible. Then I would be reminded that I was losing this match.
England have had their worst day yet.
In order to excel at chess perhaps later on, you've got to be prepared to lose and lose and lose. Now this is very, very hard for youngsters who like a bit of success. They go home and tell Mum, I won tonight.
I know, playing in the World Under-20 Championship last year, the night before the last game, I just didn't get a wink of sleep because I was so nervous and I was so close to getting that title. And of course, I didn't unfortunately make it, but just that pressure, it just tipped me over the edge, and for a while I just didn't want to look at another chessboard.
Yo, bring it on down!
Yeah, we probably played 30 or 40 games tonight, so you won't feel too bad if you lose one or two. But if you're in a tournament and you lose a game, which might be a crucial game, the last round or the penultimate round, it takes you days to recover from that, literally.
It's good to hate losing, I think. But equally, it's not good to give up because you hate losing. You have to ask yourself why you lose.
Every game you play is important to your chess development. You don't always learn by winning games. Actually, the games I've lost, I've often learnt more from, because you go back to the drawing board, your analysis board, away from the tournament, and you repair your ideas. You're forced to be creative, because you can't go on losing the same game.
You've also got to have, to some extent, a thick skin. Because if you suffer, it really makes you suffer to lose, and you feel humiliated, as many of us do. I'm afraid you probably will never succeed, because you've got to be prepared to work at it.
I'm trying to think of other little bits of advice one could give that might help people in their game.
Just play as much as possible, to try and learn from your mistakes, maybe discuss it with your opponent afterwards.
Make sure that when you actually do play, you keep your concentration up all the time, because there's so many different things that can always happen.
And the other slightly unorthodox piece of advice is that, if it's possible, give check whenever you can. So it might be checkmate, you never know.
You're not going to conquer the world in a week, but if you just keep going, and little by little, you'll make steady progress.
I think the key thing is someone who's got patience and determination to succeed. I think you've got to have patience to play the game without getting distracted, and you've got to want to win, Otherwise, the whole thing becomes pointless.
And to stay at a decent level, you have to play chess as much as possible. You know, it's like any discipline. If you fall out of practice, you get rusty. That's basically it. So basically, keep playing.
Oh God, that was stupid.
The creation of a massive floating mastaba on a London lake next on BBC4, showing in celebration of his life the monumental art